There's one event that I have marked on my calendar pretty much the year from when it happens because when they put out those dates, I want to have my calendar clear and also want to make sure I can get to it because it's such a fun event, and that is the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. And it's back for its 35th year, and we're going to be talking about all the things that go on there. But first, let's welcome in the president and COO of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, Randy Prasse.
Hello. And I also have that on the date on my calendar, oddly enough.
Well, I would hope so.
2 years ahead, actually. We have to look 2 years out sometimes. But
Well, I was
thanks for
going to
having
say,
me.
absolutely. I was going to say, for you and everything that you do, we were kind of talking a little bit beforehand. The events in September, but right now is like the second busiest time of the year for you as tickets are on sale or have gone on sale. Different things are happening. So, are you doing okay? Have you had any sleep, or is everything going well?
I've actually got a great team. And I may not have been able to answer this way 2, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, but no, I've got a great team that takes the lead on a lot of the details that I no longer have to. So I sleep fine, except for the morning when tickets go on sale. Every year I wake up and I think no one's going to buy a ticket. It's kind of like the Tom Brady before every game. He'd get butterflies and sick to his stomach. I'm kind of the same way on ticket sales day. But no, it is a busy time. But again, a great team. And people always ask, like after the festival, like, well, what do you do now? What do you do the rest of the year? I'm like, this is what we do all year round. There's no magic wand that gets waved in a month before the festival. But I mean, the little detail things like our glassware. If I don't order my glasses by end of day tomorrow, there's a chance we don't get them in July when we need them to kind of start organizing. And we do the flasks that the Flask Force VIP get. I just approved the design this morning so they can go into production. There's a lot of that stuff that people don't realize goes on, and so it's really crunch time right now.
And, people might not realize this. Like I said, it's the 35th year, which is a major milestone. But it's changed a lot over those 35 years. And, for you, that's been a part of it for a good while now, these last few years, 5, 6 years now that you've been a part of it?
Yes. January 2020. I started right before we ever heard the word COVID and pandemic. That's when I started. So lucky me, jump right in.
Well, so I mean, for you, even just in your short amount of time, a lot has changed. But obviously, from the beginning of this 35 years ago, a lot has changed. So, what stands out the most about how this event has evolved over time?
Well, I mean, it started for the first 29 years. It was really community focused. It was where distillery workers and their friends and family came out. It was a free event. He had a main stage, Kentucky headhunters playing. You had a big beer garden. You had arts and crafts, and you had a car show and a hot air balloon glow and a pancake breakfast and a golf scramble, but no bourbon at the Bourbon Festival. And so that was becoming very evident since 2015, 2016. The distilleries were at the peak of this boom, and a lot of whiskey events were popping up, and events that were really focused on the distillery and not so much just the community. And so we started losing distilleries. I mean, I look at the 2019, the festival before I came, they had 11 distilleries involved, 9 of them at the actual festival ground, then a couple of the craft distilleries that would be involved in the tastings. And 4 of those had said, we're not going to be coming back next year. That's before we knew that nobody was coming back in 2020. But and so our board, which is comprised largely of distilleries, they did an exhaustive study, a survey. They hired a company to come in and interview not only the distilleries but also consumers. A random selection of bourbon enthusiasts, and it was very clear what we needed to do. And so 2019 December, they launched the search, and they did a national search, but here I was right down the road in Louisville, and so I threw my hat in the ring, and by the middle of January, I had a new gig, and so what we needed to do was focus on distilleries. So I kind of joke that I was the why the festival's it needs to change, and then I come in as the how, and I was very evident. The industry is very developed, and the bourbon enthusiasts were also they're sophisticated. They know the background, they know how it's made. They're very scientific in a lot of cases, and the festival wasn't that at the time. So to get it synced up, I kind of hit that fast forward button and get the festival and the industry not just synced up, but maybe even a step ahead. So we started like the very first week. I met with Steve Coombs, who does all of our premium education and is really knowledgeable on the industry, more so than I was coming in. I mean, I came from Churchill Downs, so I knew thoroughbred horse racing, and I knew bourbon was part of that. Cigars is part of that, but I really hadn't had the opportunity to immerse myself in bourbon yet. But he said, it's got to be. It's about whiskey and the people who make it. We got to always showcase that. We always have to remember that the celebrity in this case is got to be the distillery if they're going to come back and give us a second chance in some cases, and in most cases come for the first time. So during the pandemic year, when we still thought we were going to have the festival in September, and then we pushed it back into October, thinking, well, maybe a month will give us a little extra time to, get this thing through, and obviously didn't. But we had 34 distilleries signed up. 17 of them, literally half, were craft distilleries that had never been included or never invited, never participated, whatever the case might be. And then we just no looking back. I mean, and I always tell your viewers, listeners, I'll unapologetically say you're always going to be the second most important piece of this puzzle, because if the distilleries aren't the focal point, then they lose interest and they go away, which means you lose, we lose. So that one thing that I picked up at Churchill Downs that carries over into kind of our philosophy with the festival. We were in a meeting one day, and the sponsorship people were talking about how record sponsors for the Derby and ticketing record for the ticketing. And my boss, who has been a horseman since a teenager in high school, he said, "That's all fine and great. We need all that. We need the 20 million viewers on NBC. But if you don't have 20 horses in the starting gate, you don't have a Derby. And you take care of the horsemen, you take care of the people on the backside, and all the workers, and you'll have the Derby." And that's kind of our Derby is if we don't have the distilleries in the starting gate or at the Bourbon Festival, then we don't have anything. And so that's one of the kind of inspirations behind what we always remind ourselves daily. Focus on the whiskey, focus on the people who make it, and make sure you take care of them and show them the love, and they'll keep coming. And so this year we kind of capped it off at 65 Kentucky distilleries with a short waiting list of a couple that would like to get in, or a couple that want to get larger tents and so forth. So it wasn't rocket science. It was just the obvious, like take care of the number one thing and everything else will kind of follow. And obviously I'm oversimplifying it, but that's probably the change. And that didn't come without some scars. I mean, if you remember the first year or two, the local community, a lot of the warehouse workers and things really felt like we were kicking them out or keeping them from coming, slapping them in the face. And, so we had a lot of local goodwill that we had to do also to show them, no, if we didn't make this change, this festival is already on the verge of bankruptcy for the second time. We had a bailout years ago, and thank God for that. But, the locals, the volunteers that put this thing on, it absolutely was not meant to be a slap in the face. But if we didn't do something quickly, it was going to go away. And so we still you have to remind people of that, but look, I mean, people would say, and I'm not joking, but like Facebook posts and things that first year, and I got to the point where I don't even look at our social media anymore because it really deflates me, because I take it personally. I put everything I have into this event. But people were like, well, we've been supporting that festival for years. And people are like, well, how did you support it? Well, we went to the beer garden, and we bought stuff from the craft vendors, but very few people said anything about actually celebrating the bourbon, and enjoying it. And so we constantly focus on that too. I mean, we didn't put a fence up to keep people out. We put a fence up. The first year was to manage how many people were going to be there, because it was still COVID. I mean, if you remember, you went to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, you had someone with the walkie-talkie on the entrance and someone on the exit. 2 people would leave and 2 people could get let in, and that's what we were planning on doing, was having to manage through the social distancing and everything, and it just, the fence stayed, and we said, well, let's see if people will pay $10. We're going to be spending a lot of money on this thing. So the first year of the Bourbon Festival, 2021, when we actually were able to have it, it was $10 a day and $20 for the weekend. And then you had to buy drink tickets, that was kind of the transition to where we are now. But we had sampling. Every one of those 34 distilleries were doing sips to lips and talking to people. And I thought, wow, we really have something here. And the next year, I think we went to 48. The year after that, we had 54 distilleries. And then we kind of capped it. We're landlocked now with the space. But but yeah, it was really amazing to watch that transition. And distilleries are now telling us, obviously, there's the little downturn and the renormalizing of the market. But they're saying, hey, there's a lot of whiskey events that we're no longer doing, but you're the first one that we make sure we get in the budget and we make our plans, and and that's all very, very humbling to us. Just a long ways from where we started.
Well, you've mentioned, and we've been able to talk the last few years. I've been able to go the last few years as well, and it's a must attend whiskey event or experience for a lot of folks because you really do get to. I mean, I know there are a lot more events, but I mean, you get to see literally everybody from Kentucky, and usually it's the top guys from all those brands. And for you, you guys have changed the footprint a little bit. Like you said, you're a little bit landlocked as far as where you can go. You've gone up a little on a couple things. What's it been like to upgrade those things, kind of move some folks around, Heaven Hill last year being moved and different things from the spots that everyone got to expect them. How has that gone, and what maybe new things can folks expect this year when they get to go?
Well, and great, all great. The first point, I went to the very first Farm Aid back in '85 or '86, and I was a photographer. I was working for a newspaper, and I was walking around, had my backstage pass like Wayne's World, walking around, and like there goes John Mellencamp. Well, there goes Neil Young. Holy cow! I mean, and that's what the Bourbon Festival is like for the true bourbon enthusiasts. They're walking around, and Fred No's going that way, and Brent Elliott's going that way, and here comes Denny Potter and Jane Bowie going the other direction. And you're right. They're actually, most cases, you're buying the bottle now that the last couple of years the law changed, and we can get more on that later, but you're buying the bottle and having them sign right there in the tent. So in a lot of ways you are backstage at like a Lollapalooza where you're actually interacting with the stars of the show. And that's not by accident. It's very deliberate. That we always tell that each distillery, because I'm a consumer. I used to run craft beer festivals. I still love going to craft beer festivals. And the thing that drives me crazy is when I find a beer that I really like sampling here, and I ask the person behind the table, tell me about this beer, and they're like, I don't know, man, I'm just wearing a volunteer shirt, So I tell the distilleries that have your actual local team here, and if that's not possible if you're hiring an agency, make sure you spend some time with them to educate them on what they're serving, so they can at least talk about mash bills and kind of the high level stuff before they hit that wall. And like, I don't know, that's as much knowledge as I know, but I'll find that out, so because it is educational, and we've got the unique challenge of we have to be sophisticated for the most knowledgeable enthusiast, but we also can't be intimidating because there's still a lot of people coming in to bourbon, and we have to exist both ways. So you might have the most seasoned bottle collector in the world standing here, and the next person owns one bottle, but they're here because they're curious, and they're exploring it. So we try to keep that in mind too. But the other part of your question was like when we moved Heaven Hill. Anybody who went to the first 3 years of the festival, it was a sampling only event. You got your little Glen, and you walked around and you sampled. And then when the law changed and distilleries were allowed to sell, that was a game changer for everyone. Because now for the first time, it took us 33 years of this festival for some of the, like Heaven Hill and Jim Beam and Wild Turkey, who'd been there since day one, to where they could actually monetize the event. Otherwise, it was pure expense. It was staffing expense. It was cost of all their displays and moving and setting up and tearing down, and the hours that people had to work there. It was all expense, no chance to recover any of it. And now they're cash flowing positive, and we love that part of it. But the lines that never used to be there are now there, and Heaven Hill and Jim Beam and Maker's Mark, and to some extent, the Brown-Forman brands have those lines. And so I remember clearly it was a Friday opening day, the first year that bottle sales were going, and I was upstairs. My office is right there in Spalding Hall, the third floor of the old 200-year-old building this year. And I looked out and I saw this line. I'm like, oh my God, we've ruined this event. It used to be a really chill kind of a vibe, kind of stroll through the park. For those of you who haven't been there, a lot of mature trees, the craft area in particular, it's just this beautiful park-like setting. And now we had these lines, and I thought, oh my God, we have to fix this. Well, Heaven Hill was the biggest culprit, and I've I've said, so if anybody from Heaven Hill's watching this, you know it. I mean, we've talked about this. We've had special meetings about this. But we thought, okay, we need to change this because the line for Heaven Hill on Xavier down on the bottom was going all the way across the lawn up into the St. Joseph parking lot. And it was blocking 8 other distilleries that were trying to, do things. So we got them to be part of the solution year one, and let's do something about getting people through. And the other problem was we had people that just wanted to sample and not buy, commingled in one line. So now people are like, I'm waiting in line for 45 minutes for a sample. I'm not doing that, and they'd leave, which is not a good experience. So last year we took over the St. Joseph's parking lot and put the larger distilleries that have the special limited releases, we put them on the end of the parking lot. We carpeted the whole lot. We put up a big weather, like a sun. We hoped it was a sunscreen, but it also dual if it rains. But some of the bigger distilleries out there and manage the lines a little better. Now you're still going to stand in line, which I don't like that, but people that are really into it, that's what you do. You stand in line at the distilleries. You wait for the limited release. You do it every day, every week. So there's some things that we're not going to be able to fix, but and we're working hard every year. And people, the thing that I don't like about this festival, if you're running a football stadium and you screw something up this Sunday or Saturday, if it's college, you can fix it for the next game. Churchill Downs, they have 80 days of racing. You can fix things then right away. And I have to wait 361 days to put a solution in place, unless it's something we can fix on the fly, during the festival. But so the distilleries, we have 800 VIPs. They get in an hour early. Most distilleries don't have 800 bottles of the limited release set aside for those people. So now you get people that are coming in early expecting, or at least wanting to have a really great opportunity. But a lot of them are expecting to be able to walk in and almost have a guaranteed bottle, which is not the case. But and then, a distillery has 200 bottles for 800 people. Someone's going to be disappointed. But if you don't communicate with them, not only are they disappointed, but the guy or girl in front of you gets the last bottle. And I stood in line for an hour for this, and now I'm mad. And the other part of it, for me and the other 64 brands that are there, that person has been out of circulation. They haven't been standing in line and going and checking out other distilleries. We've lost an hour of that day standing in line to come up empty-handed. So we're constantly working on, especially with the larger distilleries, coming up with a way to at least communicate. If you're in line for this bottle, we have X number. If you're from here back, chances are you're not going to get it. We have other things you can get, but you're probably not going to get this. And actually, we have volunteers and some security staff there to help manage that and communicate that coming up this year. So you're always going to have the line, and you're always going to have people that are disappointed because it's turned into more of a buying event than a sampling event. Nobody was disappointed when it was just a sampling event, unless they're like, sorry, folks, today's allocation that we were going to pour for you is gone. And they grumble and they go to the next place. But if they don't get the bottle they came there for, then they're ticked, and they remember that experience. And that for me, from the time that you first listen or watch this and never heard of us, and you go to our website or you find us on social media, that's where your experience begins. You're getting your accommodations, your hotel or Airbnb, and getting to Bardstown, that's another part of that experience. Going home, and what is your experience when you leave? That's all part of it, not just from the time you get to the festival and leave. I keep in mind that it's the communications and trying to make sure people are prepared when they get there. Like, if you don't already have your hotel rooms right now and you have tickets, that's a problem. You need to figure that out. But no, it's constantly managing that, and we survey our guests at the end of the year, and we have a very high response rate. Everything we do blows data mine people away, because we have 49,000, almost 50,000 subscribers on our email list. Very clean, extremely low. I mean, I don't know, it's like 2% unsubscribes during the course of a year. I spend the first half hour of every morning unsubscribing from stuff on my personal emails and stuff. So, but no, it's very low. And when we do a survey or send information out, like the other day on opening day, we had a 25% open rate on that email to get people over to the Tixer website. We had 15,000 people logged into the Tixer website on Monday, the first day, for 600 VIP tickets and 4,200 GA tickets. And so I mean, we have to figure that out too, because not only are we creating lines that we need to manage at the festival, now we've got this unrealistic 50,000 people. If only this many people have a chance, that's not a nice thing either. Now, a lot of those people don't go every year or whatever, but I mean, so we're going to look at like cleaning the list up, and if you haven't been to the festival in the last 2 years, then we're probably going to drop you, and then if you still are interested, you can resubscribe and get back on the list. But yeah, so it seems like we're managing a lot of lines is what we're professionally doing now. But that's humbling too, because I tell you that first year, for 30 years, let's call it, probably the majority of the people that came to the festival as it was then were locals, regionals, and the last 3 years, I haven't checked this year, but I'm going to do that when we get done here. 85% of the people that buy tickets and attend the festival are from outside of Kentucky. And 15% obviously then are the Kentucky folks. But when you look at ranking where the people are coming from, Kentucky by far is the number one state in attendance. But we have all 50 states. Last year we had 15 foreign countries that had people that came. So the international part of it is growing too, which is very cool, because if you talk to distilleries, there's the gold ring is getting into the UK and the platinum ring is getting into India. I mean, those are like the goals. So having that international appeal is something very important too, and it's fun. It's fun to see the groups of people standing and taking pictures, and they're from Japan or whatever, and you talk to them, and so that's very gratifying as well.
I was going to say, I mean, you guys, like you said, you've worked hard behind the scenes, one, on the flow of everything, but also working with legislative folks, the Distillery Association, things like that, to allow other things to happen. And one of those is, like you said, the ability to buy special release bottles or just regular bottles from the distilleries. How important has that been? Because I think last year, part of the reason you kind of switched up with the dates, it moved it up a little bit in the month, was to help it kind of be part of the kickoff to National Bourbon Heritage Month, have those special releases. So how important has that exclusivity become to that experience at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival?
Well, it's important for different audiences for different reasons, or different parties. So for the Bourbon Festival, our promise is you're going to be able to come to the Kentucky Bourbon Festival in the bourbon capital of the world and buy bottles you won't see anywhere else in the world. And so when we do our single barrels, we're well over 100 now in the history, but the first year we did 11 of them. Then we grew it to 20, and then 20, and then we did 44 single barrels, and last year we pulled it back a little bit. Because number one, when you do a barrel pick, and you've probably been on several, your day is kind of ruined, right? I mean, if it's at 10 o'clock in the morning, you're not motivated in the afternoon to go to work, because you just got done sampling 12 different barrels. And in the afternoon, it just kind of shoots your whole day. But so that's important for us to make that promise that you're going to find bottles that you can't find anywhere else. For the consumer, I mean, obviously that is the same shared piece, but for the distilleries, to be able to have that sales revenue, and because of the legislation that went through, the gift shop provision, as I kind of informally call it, they're not going through the 3-tier, and I know that doesn't necessarily, if wholesalers are listening, that's not my fault, but their margins are better when they sell their bottles at MSRP. They're making more money back to the distillery because of that, just like if you're buying from the gift shop. So they're not gouging you. It's the same thing that every day when you go on a tour and you stop and buy a bottle, it's the exact same pricing and the exact same situation, but just at the festival. So, and we're very fortunate because early on, Steve Amato and Neil Morris coincidentally is Chris Morris, it's his son, but they're our legal counsel, and they are also the Kentucky Distiller Association legal counsel. So those two gentlemen, when I talk to them and ask them questions about legal issues, they're the ones that wrote the legislation. These are the guys. They're the most knowledgeable people in the spirits industry, and they're on our retainer with me. So, because we never want to do something that's going to violate the law, certainly, and we have to get our permits the same way that everyone else does. And the cool thing was one of the ABC commissioners in Frankfurt, off the record, had told me that when it comes to alcohol spirits events in Kentucky, we're the gold standard. We're buttoned up. We've got an operations plan. We've got site plans. We explain how we're going to sell products, and we come in with a binder, and they don't rubber stamp it. They go through every page of it, but they trust me now that we're going to run a buttoned up event, the field inspector came out 2 years ago, and he called me on my phone during the festival. I'm like, oh, God, this is not good. And he goes, Randy, I've been here for 3.5 hours looking, and I couldn't find one violation. He's like, it's great. And I said, look, I know that that's not your job. Your job is to find the violation and try to make it right. But for you to share that with me, I'm taking that with the gravity of knowing that that's the ultimate compliment from someone who's out there like doing their job and they can't find anything that we should do differently. And I said, is there anything we can do? I always want to improve. And he said, well, you can always put more of your liquor, your permits up around the festival grounds and stuff, but everywhere you needed them, you've had them. And so we take that very seriously as well. Just the operational, if we tell Frankfurt we're going to do something, well, we better do it in practice, in actuality. So, but it's fun. I mean, it is the most amazing, fun job. I've done festivals for 36 years now. And anytime I find myself grumbling, I think about it. Seriously, dude, look at what you're doing and what everyone else has to do. And I grew up on a dairy farm, so I mean, I never had vacations or weekends. Milk the cows 7 days a week, and so a bad day for me is a lot better than my dad, good day farming was. So, but yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of details, and it really is. When people say, "What do you do the rest of the year?" I want to show them. I want to show them the Gantt chart of our timeline that shows all the. I hired a project manager. He was the president of Cutter Group, our main presenting sponsor. He retired on 12/31, and January 1st this year he had a job with me because I've been telling him when that happens. But it is that big of a monster of a everything from ordering glasses to our fun little collector pens that we have, and every single thing has to be on a timeline. It has a start and an end and a deadline, and so we started very broad and said, look, if we've spent money, if we've given a check or paid something with a credit card for the festival, it needs to be accounted for not only on the bookkeeping side and budget, but it has to be something in this project management software that we've gotten. So, but you asked earlier how I'm sleeping. Because of all of these things and the team and the programs and the shareability of things, the first year was me and one other person and a clipboard. And literally in 6 years, we've gotten into all this shared, Google shared drive documents, and our whole world and history is on the cloud now, but it makes it easy for everyone to access it. So begrudgingly, I had to kind of go along with the technology, and now I'm so glad I did, because I can sleep at night.
Well, and because of that, like you said, you've taken care of the folks, and the list is up to where you guys want it to be, the max at the moment, at 65. More than 60 distilleries participating. How do you balance the major heritage brands? And obviously you've done a great job of kind of giving them their space, but allowing them to maybe do more activations. You've got, then kind of the smaller big brands, and then you've got the craft area, which is one of my favorite. But how do you balance all of that, get the flow to go through, and just have something there truly for everybody?
Well, I'm not a kingmaker, so we don't pick and choose winners and losers. So if a distillery comes to us with an idea, we encourage that, but we also don't go to all the other distilleries and say, hey, here's a good idea that, and so if any distillery says, well, why do they get to do that? Which happens very few times. I mean, it's because they're creative and they came to me with an idea and I encouraged them to do it. So you go back to your team and get creative. And I think you've seen that as the challenge. We started doing like the People's Choice Award for the best activation by the different levels. So there's 3 awards that we give based on the sizes of the distilleries. And when we first started out, I didn't beg the craft distilleries to come, but it was like we set the pricing so favorably for them because I didn't want the price of participating to be the reason why they couldn't or wouldn't. So that first year, but I look everybody in the eyes. I told the big distilleries that we're paying X dollars. I said to do this right, we need to have all of distilleries represented. And so for the first couple of years, until they get their legs under them, the brunt of the financial piece is going to be on your sponsorship, and we'll adjust. And we did that last year. So we adjusted, increased, but now with the craft distilleries selling, it's not a thing. If we would have gone from $1,000 in year 1 to $4,000 in year 2 without the bottle sales, they would have flipped out and gone home. So we've kind of just had an annual escalator. So that kind of creates a level playing field that at least everyone pays. I can look everybody in the eye and tell everybody, you're paying the same as this size distillery. There's no exceptions. And the big distilleries are so focused on looking the presentation and obviously selling bottles and working, so they don't have time to go and look at what someone else might do. But some of the smaller craft brands are a little bit more, well, why do they get to do that? I'm like, oh, look, dude, you weren't here 2 years ago, so be careful. No, I'm kidding. But we do try to create that where it's a level playing field, at least, to where if you are creative and you want to do something, we'll make the space for you. Some of them don't have that, gumption, or they just want to be there and focus on the product, which is one of the reasons why when you look at the festival, we're all uniform tents. They're white tents, and you can do whatever you want inside the tent and with some reason outside, but we don't want the focus to be these lavish buildings and, oh, look at that, because I want people to focus on what's going on, what's in the bottle, not what the presentation looks like. And I think, given the park setting, I think it just kind of works. The white tents have kind of become part of our branding. But even that part is we've gotten better at it, because we know we need to manage the lines. And as the distilleries over the last couple of years, tents have gotten bigger. So someone who was Rabbit Hole, for instance, was a 20 by 20. Now they're a 30 by 30, and Whiskey House is there with the double decker. They're 30 feet by 30 feet, 2 stories. So people on social media were like, why does the Bourbon Festival continue to sell more and more tickets, and it's already so crowded? We have not sold. In fact, this year we sold 50 fewer tickets than we did in previous years. So we've never increased the number of tickets there. It's just the aisles are getting tighter. So my guy that I used to work with at Churchill Downs, if you've been to Derby, everything that's temporary at Churchill Downs Derby week was under my purview. So all the tents, the infield, all the suites and all that stuff. If you go on a normal day and don't see it, that wasn't me. But the guy that owned the tent company and I worked with from March 10th, I'll give you a little insight on Derby, March 8th, 9th, 10th was the first day that temporary structures started to show up, scaffolding and things. For the first Saturday in May, we were building around the clock, literally up until Derby. But I brought him in a couple years ago, and he is really the one that's the mastermind behind the flow and the layout and making sure that the fronts of the tents look nice. We get out there with a laser level and flag it. We're out there in the snow. I know it feels weird that we're talking that snow, but it wasn't that long ago that it was snow. We're out there with flags and spray paint marking the grounds, trying to get an idea of how many distilleries we could allow in and the ones that wanted to grow and get larger footprints. And so there's 2 or 3 times a year where he comes down from Chicago, and we spend 3-4 days on a CAD drawing that I had created and doing the layout stuff. So the flow hypothetically should work, and he's been with us long enough now. He knows where the kind of the clog points are, and so we change things to improve, not just for the sake of changing. So when you see food trucks moved one place or the marketplace vendors moved, it's not because we just randomly put stuff up. It's very thought out as far as let's make sure that that first and foremost the distilleries are the stars of the show. So some of the marketplace vendors made a lot more money when they're right there in the lawn with the distilleries. But as the distilleries grew, I can't tell a distillery I can't have you this year off the wait list because I've got a marketplace vendor that's had that spot for the last 10 years or whatever. So we try to have that experience where obviously you need to have food. The marketplace vendors with unique the bourbon theme things are an important part of the show. The stages that we put with music, or the main stage where you've got kind of a flip-flop of education and then music and education all day, that's all very deliberate and adding the layers to that experience. And that keeps it challenging. I mean, that's why none of our people get bored. Because if it was just a cookie-cutter event and you just show up and Jim Beam's always here and Heaven Hill's always there, I mean, that's not fun. So the challenge of making it work is fun.
Well, and you've been able to add, like I said, new things. You keep it fresh. That no matter what, if you've been coming for all 35 years or like me for the last few, there's always something different there. There's different brands, and they're all doing different activations. They're getting better at it. And another thing that is going to be happening, I believe it is next week. Ticket sales are sold out at the moment, but there are at least 15 or so premium events that'll be
Yeah.
happening in the great tent
Great tent.
that folks can check out and add on to their tickets. So what can folks expect there, and what other things are coming online next week as well?
Yeah, and the Great Tent, just in and of itself, is kind of a fun little story. The first year, if you were at the 2019 KBF, for instance, you had whatever the experience was at the lawn, and then you'd go to different buildings, different sites around that. Then you could do some sampling and things, but it wasn't right there. So I thought it was important because a lot of people were saying, "Well, where is the Bourbon Festival? We don't see it. We're in town, but we're." So we thought, it's got to be very condensed, tight. We can't let people leave. I mean, we want to give them the experience and keep them there to where they're not having to go all over. So the Great Tent was kind of that first opportunity for, like, we did dinners because the first year we were open until 10 o'clock at night. So we were doing evening dinners, and Beam did the Beam family barbecue, and Fred and Freddie were there, and we, they were smoking meat, and you had this sit down dinner and they would speak. So that was kind of the start of the premium programming, that you could come to the festival and have a great time, and you could still go and do kind of a la carte, upgrade and add on and create your own unique experience. So that Great Tent concept has changed a little bit to where obviously we now close at 6 o'clock on Friday and Saturday, and we're not there all night. So the dinner piece is not, but still doing some showcase events during the day to help people, to show off the distillery. So a lot of distilleries are really into the cocktail piece of the industry, and some are more connected to the culinary side. So we still have that balance of culinary and cocktail that they find important, but then us, the consumers, who doesn't want to know how to make a better cocktail, or who doesn't want to understand how to be a better host, and how do you incorporate bourbon into your glazes and your meats and things. So that checks both sides of that. It's relevant to the distilleries, and it's important for them to be there and have the audience to talk about that subject, but it's also important for the guests to have that opportunity to go. And not everyone wants that, and that's kind of the cool thing. You can pick and choose. So you mentioned tickets being on sale and then sold out. That did happen. So next Thursday and Friday are going to be the opportunities for people to do those add-on, those a la carte experiences, and reserve your locker for the weekend, and get your shuttle tickets. We've been trying. It's really difficult in Bardstown. There's no, like, Uber and Lyft service available there, so that's probably the number one thing. When people come in, they're like, "Well, how the heck am I supposed to get around?" So we started a shuttle service a couple years ago where it would run from downtown hotels to downtown Louisville, excuse me, down to, and that just, it got to be very cumbersome and very expensive for us. So this year we're just asking people to, I think it's $30 for a round trip, which is half the price of what an Uber would be or a Lyft would be. So we're trying to cover our costs and not make money on it is literally what we're doing on that. So, but those kind of things will be able to be added on next week. And if you did get your VIP tickets, and a small group of people, we're going to be then polling and asking for your shirt sizes and stuff. And one more thing that has to get into production and moved along. But yeah, it really, and we wanted to separate the add-ons from the on-sale, because the last 2 years we've kind of moved everything to everything is on sale. When we go on sale, you're buying your whole experience, but people were going in first and getting their tickets and putting them in the cart, and then there was a glitch a year or two ago where if you went back into the website to add on, it cleared your cart, and that's that nightmare scenario that no matter how much you prepare for it, when the program or the website crashes and doesn't. So we thought this year let's give it a focal point. You get your tickets first, take a breath, and then you can go in and plan your experience without having the stress of trying to do it all in 10 minutes on sale day. So, and it worked the first couple of years. We would sell tickets the first, like, mid-May, and then mid-June, National Bourbon Day was actually strategically when we would come up and let people do their separate dinner events and things. But part of that was also, it was so early and so new that it was difficult to get everybody to plan that far ahead. The distilleries, first and foremost, to take that limited dinner spot and then figure out what they're going to do. And so we're sitting there like, come on, folks, we got to go on sale. And people aren't going to buy tickets to a dinner they don't know about. But amazingly, they did. They would buy tickets, and that was a trust thing. So I'm very proud of that. But people would buy tickets if it was a Jim Beam or if it was Rabbit Hole or Angel's Envy. They would buy the ticket for the experience even before like the menu and the details of the experience would be on the website. So that's a lot of trust, not only in what the distillery was going to offer, but that we were going to be able to execute it too. So I don't like doing that. I prefer to tell people up front what they're going to get. So that's what's going on next week.
Well, and if someone did miss out on tickets to this year's event, I believe there's some new options that you guys can finally talk about that are out there to maybe either get on a wait list or maybe still get into the event. What can you tell us there?
Well, the wait list and a resale opportunity. So the wait list has been in place the last 2 years, and some people do. I mean, there are people that buy tickets in April and they forgot there's a wedding coming up, or they have a funeral that unfortunately they have to attend, or whatever. And so people can now go in and sell through the security of the Tixar website, not on Facebook Marketplace. And that's one thing. If anybody's watching, listening, don't trust the Facebook Marketplace, because people are out there trying to sell tickets to the Bourbon Festival before they even went on sale. And so, I mean, just buyer beware on that kind of stuff. But so you can do the resale. And so if you don't have a ticket and you get on that wait list, there's a chance that you're going to be able to, someone can't go, we refund the ticket and it automatically goes to the next two people on the wait list that are looking for that specific level of ticket, including general admission. So if you didn't get in on just the basic 3-day GA ticket, you can get on that wait list and have a fighting chance at least.
Well, and I love that there are still options out there if someone just happened to miss. Now, if they want to get more information for not only this year, but for next year, things like that, what do they need to do? Because like you said, you have a nice list that tells people what's going on. You have a website that gives all sorts of information. So where can they go and what should they do?
Yeah, good point. And our website was just redone a month ago. All new graphics and a lot more interactivity. You can actually go and search. So if you're looking for a specific master distiller, you can search by that person's name and see where all they're going to be during the festival, and vice versa. If you're looking for a specific brand, you can check and see if they're going to be there and everything. So there's a little bit more searchability built in. But we have the FAQ page that talks about what to expect if you're coming. But then we also will, as soon as the dates for 2027 are announced, then we will put that on there. But again, you can add yourself to the Bourbon Insider, sign up for that. But that might be something. I'm not sure how we're going to do that. They might want to wait until, if we do a summer cleanup on that list to kind of get it down to a more manageable number. They might want to wait a little bit to go in and sign up, because if they show on the Insider but they don't cross-check with our ticketing service, there's a chance that they might get bumped. But anyway, that's and our social media is very active. So Instagram, for sure, at KY Bourbon Fest on the socials. So we have X. We do have a TikTok page that I'm not too active on, but we've got some good people on that team that are really into doing the social media stuff. So Facebook and Instagram by far are the most active, but. And we focus more on Instagram because that just happens to be more like where the lifestyles, people, and the food and beverage, and it's a little more interactive that way. So I would recommend start with the Instagram and then go over and find us on Facebook. And we also have a YouTube channel, a Kentucky Bourbon Festival YouTube channel that was born out of the COVID year. In August, we said this festival's not going to happen, but we already had all of the education, the premium stuff that we just got talking about already booked. The master distillers weren't going anywhere because of COVID, so Bardstown Bourbon Company gave us their space, and over a series of 4 days, we filmed 14 segments. And if there is a silver lining to COVID, and there really isn't, but it gave me time to better understand and plan for the 2021 festival, because we had that extra time. But this virtual, when we switched to virtual, there was a lot of content out on the internet, but not a lot of good content, quality content. And when we scheduled, it was closed. It was we had two videographers, an assistant, and Steve Coombs was doing the interviewing, and then the master distillers would show up. And we purposely did them in pairs because of the collaborative nature of the festival. So you would actually have sometimes two competing master distillers sitting there talking about certain aspects of the process. But they came in very controlled, very clean, safe, and every single one of them came in and said, "Wow, you're taking this seriously," because they thought it was going to be me with a phone, interviewing someone. And we had multiple microphones, and we put lavalier mics on. We had lighting and 3 video cameras going in full production. So when it came out on YouTube, I believe that was really what started that people from around the country finding us, because we said this is the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. This is just a sampling of what you're going to experience next year when you come, and we're committed to quality production. And so I think we picked a lot of people up, and at the end of every video on the outro it said go check out the website and check us out on social media, so that grew. And then the people that were featured went back into their distilleries and talked to their marketing people, whatever, and complimented me and us on surprising them with this great video, and then they saw it online. So I think that went a long ways with the distilleries themselves to say that we're committed to doing a quality production, even in a awkward, weird time, but we still did it and pulled it off. So if anyone wants to look at, there's some really good content there from 2020, October of 2020 when we rolled them out. And if you want to learn a little bit more about the festival in general, we put out like a 1 minute and a 3 minute sizzle reel on that YouTube channel, so you can go and just, if you haven't been and you want to see what we talked about here on this episode, you can go. We have drone footage, so you can kind of see the people in the tents and a lot of going through the crowd kind of stuff. So a lot of really good things out there that kind of help at least give you an idea of the vibe that we try to create with the festival every year.
Well, and like I said, it's a fantastic event, folks. If you haven't, check it out. Put it on your list. I don't think you'll be disappointed, because like we've talked about, over 60 brands, or over 60 distilleries, multiple brands, as each of them might have several different activations, different ways to learn. You get to talk to these folks, up close, personal, shake their hand. There's so much that's going on there. And Randy, thank you for talking through of what 2026 has to offer, and I can't wait for September to come around and be back down there in Bardstown.
Same thing. We look forward to welcoming you all here. The bourbon capital of the world, after all.